So we're starting a new series on 2 Samuel. We'll be going on this for a few weeks. Let's get stuck into it. Some of you may know my history. Mandy and I got married in '98. I entered Moore College in '99 and finished in 2002. In '03, I accepted a position with a friend, someone I knew at college. It's a long story, but in effect, he was the senior minister, even though he'd only been out of college for a year. One of the lecturers of the college had agreed to be in charge and have him basically do all the things he wanted to do, and he would rubber stamp them, which looked like a good idea at the time. My friend from college was effectively in charge and did most of the preaching, ran parish council, that sort of stuff. Now, when I left college, I had high hopes. I had been, any of you who've finished any sort of university will know this feeling of, you've been studying for years, and now you finally get to do it. That's where I was. I was on cloud nine. I was finally going to be in full-time ministry. It's what I've been wanting to do since I've become a Christian. I'd made it. I was in ministry. This was what I was meant for. This was what I'd wanted to do for so long. Then I actually started. Boy, did I get a shock. I found out that my friend was a great friend, but not the ideal boss for me. And he found out that I was not the ideal employee. He and I had such wildly different personality styles that he couldn't cope with me and I couldn't cope with him. In addition to all of this, in my attempts to be ordained, I was being interviewed once a month by my senior minister and by the bishop. And I didn't realise that those meetings that happened to be on my day off were going to be so hostile. But from day one, those interviews were bringing up mistakes that I had made in my past and saying, what do you think? You should be doing this job. Now, life was tough, but I decided I was going to tough it out. We were going to get through this. And after maybe a year or two, we would move on. Then Mandy became pregnant with Adara. And this is not something I've made widely known. But Mandy got pregnant with Adara, and we were ecstatic. It was awesome. We'd waited a bit longer for her than we had for Emily. And we were just deliriously happy. I told my senior minister that Mandy was 3 months pregnant, and he didn't take it so well. He said to me, he sat me down and said, when this baby's born, you're going to collapse in a screaming heap. And I'm not prepared to take the risk of the damage that will do to my congregations. So you've got a tough choice to make. In that moment, all my hopes came crashing down. You see, if you didn't catch the threat implicit, my boss told me to quit or be sacked from ministry. I had hoped to tough it out, but I didn't. I spoke to people and they said, and I didn't tell them everything because I couldn't do that. And they said, well, it's a shame. You spent 4 years at theological college and after 1 year, you have to quit. I was sinking into depression. Everything was worse. Everything was taking longer. Everything was hard. I couldn't get a job. It was late November when I finally found someone who would employ someone who has been out of the industry for 5 years. I took a job. I was seriously underpaid. I moved my family from a big house right next to church to a house about a third the size. I moved from an area where we had support and where we were loved into an area where we knew virtually no one. We had some family who were around, but they weren't much help. I worked my guts out. I did long hours all over the place. I was depressed. If I knew then what I know now, I would have gone straight to the doctor because I was in bad shape. I took 2 different jobs. I was out of work for 7 weeks. Now, I'm not telling you this because I want to vent my spleen about how rough I had it. I'm telling you that because I'm here now. I walked a path that I never, ever would have walked if it had been up to me. I would not have chosen to go where I went, the way I went, to get here. But I'm here now. And I have seen God moving in my life in an amazing way to prepare us for here and for what we would do. 3 years ago, when Rob asked me to come and work with him, he did not know he was going to have a heart attack less than 2 years later. He didn't know that his wife would be diagnosed with breast cancer a year after that. God worked in my life in ways that have got nothing to do with me. Nothing at all to do with me. But God did it for his own purposes, so that he would be glorified. Now 2 Samuel starts a little bit like this. Okay? I'll show you the connections. If you recall from 1 Samuel, David was anointed king. Okay? Samuel came to him and said, listen, pour some oil on your head, you're going to be the next king of Israel. And David says, isn't Saul? Saul's in charge. I'm sure that's what he was thinking as he was getting the oil off his head. And so the rest of 1 Samuel is this story of how David wins at everything. And Saul stuffs everything up. And Saul chases David. And Saul hunts David. Saul tries to kill him every chance he gets. And David never retaliates. I'm not saying I'm that good, by the way. There's a connection there. David never retaliates against Saul. David walks a path he would never have chosen. But God does it to bring a king after his own heart to the throne. And in fact, when David has the opportunity to kill Saul, he doesn't. Now, if I was David, I would say, dude, I'm the next king. I know it. God told me. I'm just going to speed things up a little bit. That's okay, isn't it? But no, it's not okay. See, David has to do what's right, even though it would be convenient not to do that. So, okay, that's the slight connection. You'll see it more and more as we go through 2 Samuel. But come to chapter 1, as we read, and we're going to sort of flip through 4 chapters tonight. We're not going to spend that much time on each little bit. Now, we read, David returns to Ziklag. That's a Philistine town that he was given by the king of the Philistines for joining and helping out with the Philistine army because Saul was trying to kill him. And he goes back. He doesn't know that Saul is dead. He's been there for a couple of days, and an Amalekite comes along and says, listen, I've got, there's good news and there's bad news, The bad news is the king is dead. The good news is the king's dead, so you're next. Now, can I ask you, if you remember last week, or if you remember chapter 31 of 1 Samuel, can you guys pick anything from this first chapter that might have jumped out at you?
So it was told in 31 that he fell on his own sword.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one it said the guy.
Yeah. That's exactly, that was the first thing I noticed. I went, okay, Saul, in the end of 1 Samuel, fell on his own sword. But in the beginning of 2 Samuel, this Amalekite claims to have killed him. I actually don't think it's a big deal. But can anyone explain how that might be the case? And you're not allowed to say the Bible's wrong, sorry.
He's trying to impress David.
He's trying to impress David, yeah. So my guess is that's exactly right. He's come across, he's maybe even watched Saul kill himself and gone, looking, go and get the stuff, and I'll make myself a good place with David. Curry a bit of favour, maybe get something